There is a new Social Security bill moving through Washington right now in 2026, and if it passes, millions of Americans who depend on SSI, SSDI, and retirement benefits could see one of the biggest increases to their monthly checks in decades. Senator Bernie Sanders has introduced a sweeping proposal that targets the very foundation of how Social Security benefits are calculated, funded, and distributed. And the numbers being discussed are not small. We are talking about potential increases of hundreds of dollars per month for some of the most financially vulnerable people in this country. But here is the question everyone is asking: will it actually pass? Today, we are breaking down exactly what is in this bill, who benefits, how it would be paid for, and what the real chances are that it becomes law. If you or someone you love receives Social Security in any form, the next few minutes could be the most important thing you watch this week. Intro. Welcome to Seniors Updates Hub, your #1 destination for the latest news, policy changes, and benefit updates that affect retirees, disabled Americans, and everyone who depends on Social Security. We are here every week to cut through the political noise and give you the straight facts about what is happening in Washington and what it actually means for your monthly check, your health care, and your financial security. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe right now and hit the bell icon so you never miss a critical update. Because in 2026, things are moving fast, and the last thing you want is to find out about a major benefit change after it is already too late. Now let us get into this Bernie Sanders Social Security bill and everything you need to know about it. To understand why this bill is generating so much attention, you first have to understand the crisis that Social Security is currently facing. The Social Security Trust Fund has been under financial pressure for years. Demographic shifts, specifically the retirement of the baby boomer generation combined with a slower-growing workforce, have been draining the trust fund at an accelerating pace. Projections from the Social Security Administration have consistently warned that without legislative action, the trust fund reserves could be depleted within the next decade, potentially forcing across-the-board benefit cuts of roughly 20% or more. For a retiree receiving $2,000 a month, that would mean losing $400 every single month. For someone on SSI living on just over $900 a month, a 20% cut would be devastating in a way that is almost impossible to overstate. This is the backdrop against which Senator Bernie Sanders has introduced his 2026 Social Security expansion bill. And it is why the conversation in Washington around this legislation has become so urgent. The core of what Sanders is proposing is a significant and immediate increase in benefits across all three major categories: retirement benefits, Social Security disability insurance, which is SSDI, and supplemental security income, which is SSI. On the retirement side, the proposal calls for an across-the-board benefit increase for current and future beneficiaries, with the largest percentage increases going to the lowest-income retirees. The plan also includes a provision to establish a new minimum Social Security benefit, one that would guarantee no retiree who worked for decades in low-wage jobs receives a monthly check that falls below the federal poverty line. This is a concept that has been proposed before, but never successfully passed into law, and Sanders is making it a centerpiece of this legislation. The argument is straightforward. People who worked their entire lives and paid into the system should not be retiring into poverty, and right now, a significant number of them are. For SSDI recipients, people who are unable to work due to a qualifying disability and who paid into Social Security before becoming disabled, the bill proposes a meaningful increase in the monthly benefit amount as well as changes to the way disability is defined and evaluated. One of the most common complaints among SSDI recipients is that the application and appeals process is brutally long, sometimes taking years, and that the benefit amounts they ultimately receive are insufficient to cover basic living costs in most parts of the country. The Sanders bill addresses both of these issues, calling for faster processing timelines, more accessible appeals procedures, and a recalculation of benefit amounts that better reflects the actual cost of living with a long-term disability in 2026. SSI, or Supplemental Security Income, receives perhaps the most dramatic proposed changes in the entire bill. SSI currently serves some of the most economically vulnerable people in America: elderly individuals with very limited work history, people with disabilities who did not accumulate enough work credits for SSDI, and blind individuals. The current maximum federal SSI benefit is shockingly low. It has not kept pace with inflation in any meaningful way for many years. Sanders is proposing to raise the maximum SSI benefit substantially, and perhaps more importantly, he is calling for the elimination or dramatic increase of the asset limits that currently prevent SSI recipients from saving more than $2,000, or $3,000 for couples, without losing their eligibility. This asset limit has been widely criticized by advocates for decades because it actively traps recipients in poverty by penalizing them for saving even modest amounts of money. Removing or increasing this cap would be a structural change that goes far beyond a simple dollar increase in benefits. Now, this is where every discussion of Social Security expansion runs into the same unavoidable question: how do you pay for it? And this is where the Sanders bill gets both its most powerful argument and its most significant political opposition. The funding mechanism at the heart of this proposal is the elimination of what is called the payroll tax cap. Currently, the Social Security payroll tax, which is 6.2% paid by employees and 6.2% paid by employers, only applies to wages up to a certain threshold. In 2026, that cap sits at roughly $176,000. Any dollar earned above that threshold is completely exempt from Social Security taxes. What this means in practice is that a worker earning $40,000 a year pays Social Security taxes on every single dollar they earn, while a hedge fund executive earning $5 million a year pays Social Security taxes on only about 3.5% of their total income. Sanders argues, and many economists agree, that this is fundamentally inequitable, and that lifting or eliminating this cap on high earners would generate enough new revenue to not only fund the proposed benefit increases, but also extend the solvency of the Social Security Trust Fund by several decades. The political reality of this bill, however, is complicated. In the current makeup of Congress, passing sweeping progressive legislation of this scale faces enormous structural obstacles. While the expansion of Social Security benefits has strong public support across party lines, polls consistently show that Americans of all political affiliations want to protect and strengthen Social Security rather than cut it. The specific mechanism of raising or eliminating the payroll tax cap faces fierce opposition from Republicans and even some moderate Democrats, who argue it amounts to a significant tax increase on successful small business owners, doctors, lawyers, and other high-earning professionals who are not the billionaires Sanders often invokes in his rhetoric. There is also the procedural challenge of getting any major legislation through a divided or narrowly controlled Senate, where the filibuster can effectively block a bill that does not have 60 votes to proceed to a final vote. That said, the political landscape around Social Security is shifting in ways that make this conversation more consequential than it might have been 5 years ago. The looming trust fund depletion date is no longer a distant theoretical problem. It is a real and approaching deadline that Congress will eventually be forced to address. The question is not whether Social Security will be reformed, but how. The choice is essentially between cutting benefits or finding new revenue, and politically, cutting benefits is extraordinarily unpopular. This gives the Sanders approach a structural advantage in the debate, even if his specific bill in its current form does not pass exactly as written. Elements of his proposal, particularly the minimum benefit provision and some form of payroll tax adjustment, could end up in a bipartisan compromise bill as the trust fund deadline grows closer and the pressure on Congress to act becomes impossible to ignore. What this means for you right now is important to understand clearly. Nothing has been signed into law yet. No checks have increased. No eligibility rules have changed. But the trajectory of this debate and the very real fiscal deadline that Social Security is facing means that significant changes to the program are coming in the next few years, regardless of which party controls Washington. The specific question is whether those changes will come in the form of benefit increases funded by higher taxes on the wealthy, or some combination of benefit adjustments, eligibility changes, and revenue measures that a bipartisan coalition can agree to. Staying informed about these developments is not optional for anyone who depends on Social Security. It is essential because the decisions made in the next 2 to 3 years will shape the program for the next generation. The Social Security debate in 2026 is not just a political story. It is a deeply personal one for the tens of millions of Americans who receive these benefits and the tens of millions more who are counting on them in the years ahead. Bernie Sanders' bill may not pass in its current form, but it has put the issue squarely on the national agenda and forced a conversation that Washington has been avoiding for far too long. Whether you support the specific approach in this legislation or not, one thing is absolutely clear: Social Security needs action, and the window to act responsibly is getting smaller every year. Here at Seniors Updates Hub, we will continue to track every development on this bill, every vote, every amendment, and every statement from lawmakers that could affect your benefits. This is exactly what this channel exists to do: to keep you informed, to break down the complicated into the clear, and to make sure you are never caught off guard by changes that affect your financial security. If this video gave you valuable information, please give it a like. It helps more people who need this information find it. Share it with a family member, a neighbor, or anyone you know who receives Social Security or is planning to in the future. Subscribe to Seniors Updates Hub right now and turn on your notifications so you get our updates the moment we post them. Leave your thoughts and questions in the comments below. We read every single one, and your voice matters in this conversation. Until next time, stay informed, stay protected, and know that Seniors Updates Hub is always in your corner.